Hello, welcome back to State of Sonder. I'm Debbie, and today I'm going to be doing a solo episode. If you've been listening to the past two, thank you so much. And if you've been liking, please like and subscribe. Um, it's been a crazy couple weeks, I'm not going to lie. I think the two episodes that I released were filmed actually quite a long time ago. And since launching, it's just been a lot of moving parts and things that I didn't think about and all of that. And so it's been kind of overwhelming, but in the best way. I've been having so much fun. But right now I'm doing more of like a bi-weekly cadence, and hopefully that can turn into weekly. But it is a lot. And I think I haven't done something for myself in terms of like a project in a long time. I've just really stuck with my 9 to 5 job, and shifting gears into having that, but also wanting to pursue other passion projects. It's really time consuming and it does take a lot of effort, but I do think it's so fulfilling and rewarding. And especially a platform like this where it's podcasting, I get to bring on people and talk to them. And obviously they're good friends of mine, but sometimes these conversations are conversations I've never really had, or I haven't gotten that deep into certain topics with these friends that I've been friends with for so long, or they're friends that I haven't seen in like a year. And being able to kind of share life on this platform and just catch up has been so exciting and so fun. But it has been a bit of a adjustment. So I've been kind of figuring out my rhythm and my, I guess, scheduling and all of that the past couple of weeks. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I feel like my mind has just been on overdrive and it won't shut up. And so this week I was so exhausted and I was just like, oh my God, I wish my brain would just give me a break for like 24 hours. But that's not how life works, right? But something that I started in the episodes following is doing a pit of the week and a peak of the week. So how this originated was one of my best friends, Bunny, who is actually going to be on the next episode. Whenever we get together with our girlfriends, we don't get to see each other very often as a larger group now, because as we've gotten older, we're just so busy and, you know, people have their own things going on. And so when we do get together, we really just try to catch up and like gab for hours. But one thing that we do every time is we go around and we do the pit of the week and the peak of the week. So basically a high and low. And it just starts conversation, but it also just gives a gauge of like where everyone's at. Sometimes they're really silly and, you know, like not that serious, but sometimes they are. And, you know, we want to be able to show up for each other in the best way. And so that's been a really good practice. So I wanted to kind of bring that on here. My pit and my peak. I think my pit of the week is that my boyfriend has this fun car. And ever since we started dating, that car has just been a part of our story, I guess. And it's taken us through a lot of our memories. And I have an attachment to that car, and I've never had an attachment to a car. I was never a car person, but this car I really held dear to my heart. And the car caught on fire out of nowhere. And so the car caught on fire, like the hood area. I think it's the engine. I don't know cars, but I'm guessing. And the firefighters came and like poured water on it. So basically the car is totaled. It's done. It's goner. And it was really sad. I was so sad to say goodbye. And I kind of was sad that that's how we were saying goodbye, because he was planning to sell it. But I think the car just wanted the last journey to be with him. And so it was a sad send off. So that was definitely a pit. Peak of the week. Let's see. I think I've just found this new motivation and new desire to pursue things that I want to. I think for so many years of my life, I've been so focused and fixated on like building my career in a specific route. But as I shared in my first episode, I did a major career switch a couple years ago. And I think even after that switch, I've been trying to like dissect what it is in my life that I want more of, or that I feel is lacking, or where I want to find fulfillment in and where I'm not finding fulfillment in. And I think I did a very deep dive into that last year. And it was hard because I felt very lost. And I can't say that I'm like completely found now, but I was very, very lost last year. And I think navigating all of these truths and having to admit to myself certain things that weren't working for me or were working for me, it was just really challenging. It gave me a lot of anxiety and I struggled a lot last year. But I think this year I just have this new kind of drive and motivation, and I think I'm really feeling that. And so that's definitely a peak because I just want to ride this wave and see where it can take me. And even with this podcast, it's just been so fun. It's like a really great outlet for me. And so just putting a lot of time and energy into like growing something and giving life to something that I've been so curious about and so passionate about for so long is really cool. So I feel like I'm in a inspired era. I was going to say inspiration. Inspired era, and I'm embracing it completely. So with my solo episodes, I think, you know, life happens and things can happen that I want to talk about. And so that's probably what it's going to be. Like if certain instances in my life or certain experiences happen that I want to share, I would do it in a solo episode. But a lot of the people that I bring on, we talk a lot about their journey and what they're doing and how they got there. And the whole purpose of me wanting to do this podcast and even the title of the podcast was because I wanted to really dig deep and dive into people's stories. And, you know, a lot of my friends, like I've said, do really cool things. And, you know, that doesn't just happen overnight. And it takes a lot of time and effort. And there's a lot of highs and lows. And I think you see people thriving and succeeding. And you see it so much more now because we have social media and all of those things. But you get like a little glimpse of their life. And Bobo talked about this in his episode where he was like, people only see the 10% of your wins, or they only see the 10% of your life because you post it on socials or whatnot, but they don't see the 90% of what it's like every single day to be able to pursue your passion, your dream, whatever it is that you're striving for. And I really like to dig into that 90%. And because I think that shows the reality of situations and reality of, you know, human experience and a person going through everything that they're going through and processing through that and trying to be a better person, but also trying to fulfill their dream and their passion. And I think, you know, when you only see the 10%, it's really hard not to get into your own head of like, oh, they have this life, they have that life. And then, but you don't realize like, no, just like you go through your experiences every single day of like hardship or celebration or, you know, losses or failure, it's everyone is going through that. And I think you don't get to see that very often. So I really do want to touch on that. And I think for me, I'm a very happy, bubbly person. I'm someone with a very, very positive outlook on everything. Like sometimes I think I'm pretty delusional and I'm a dreamer. I'm like a dreamer child. I always was. And I try to see the good in a lot of things. However, you know, when people meet me, that's probably the vibe they'll get. But it wasn't always like that. And I think sometimes I look back on years ago when I was younger, and it's wild to me how much has changed. I'm so grateful that they've changed, but so much has changed and I feel like I'm a completely different person. And I think giving that era of life space and just really acknowledging the things that I went through and celebrating me for getting through them is very important. And I think when life is so hard and life is so busy and we're just trying to, you know, go day by day, we forget about the journey to get to where we are and, you know, be proud of ourselves and celebrate our wins. And I think a big thing that I talk to people about is just, especially at my age now, which I'm 32, turning 33 this year. I can't say that I've lived like so much life, but I've lived many years of life. And I think, you know, I have gone through certain things in certain periods and seasons of my life, just like I feel like my peers and people my age have as well. And those things can sometimes really change the trajectory of your life. But also, I think it's really important where your past and certain experiences, they give you the fuel to, you know, progress or become a better you, or, you know, give you the motivation to thrive. And, examples of that could be, you grew up in a really tough environment as a child, and that's going to shape and build you to who you are in the future. Or you were around a lot of divorce, or you experienced a lot of loss in your younger years, and that inevitably and understandably is going to make an impact in who you are and how you grow and how you see the world. And I think at this age, but also just like years to come, that doesn't always have to be necessarily your entire narrative. And I think I'll get into this, which will make it make a little bit more sense. But I've been thinking about that a lot because I think, every single person that I come across, every person in my life, every relationship that I cultivate, they're all different than me. And, Sonder, that was literally why this title came to be. And they're all different than me. But how people take what they've been through and how they grow from it or how they don't grow from it, it really shows up in your later years. And I think sometimes we live in the narrative of our trauma and the things that we've gone through, and it almost stunts our growth in our future, or it sometimes blocks the blessings and opportunities that come our way because we feel like there is no pathway to get there because of what we've been through. I think when I was younger, like as a young child, I was kind of like I am now, just a happy girl. I grew up in a very loving home. My dad wasn't the most affectionate type, which was really hard for me growing up, but my mom is the warmest, sweetest, just most amazing human being. My dad is so hardworking. He's so ambitious. He really was the like man of the house. And then I have an older brother who is my best friend, like my whole world. And just our family was close, and our family, there wasn't much drama. Like, I had a great childhood. And so in my childhood, I was very like happy girl, I feel like I was a little bit naive. I didn't really know what happened in the world. And it was just, me, my family, my friends, yada, yada. When I got into kind of high school, I started to notice like certain anxieties in me and certain things that made me feel a little bit like overwhelmed that I hadn't previously. And I think a lot of that came with the pressure of school. And I wasn't very good at school. My brother was really smart, and he was one of those annoying types that like didn't have to study and then would get like friggin' perfect SAT. I was not that kid. I'm sure my dad really wished I was, but I wasn't. And I had to really try hard. And school was just not something very fun for me. I didn't really care for it. But as I got into high school, the pressure of having to go to a good university and, the pressure of my parents wanting me to like do well in school and kind of putting me in this mindset that the only way to succeed was to go to like a good college and then get a good job after and then work for a good company and then climb up the ladder. I think that was just the norm, honestly, when I was growing up. And I think a lot of people can understand that and probably had the same experience, especially growing up in an Asian American household. But that wasn't something that like really interested me. So I had to try extra hard to be able to get there. And I felt a lot of pressure from my dad. And I think I had this almost motivation of like, you don't think that I can do it, and you don't think that I can go to this XYZ school or whatnot. So I'm going to prove it to you. And I'm a little headstrong in that way, where when something clicks in my head, I'm like, I'm going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And I'll like put all my energy there. So I think it was my end of sophomore year going into junior year, I just started really caring about school and wanting to do really well and wanting to go to a good college and all of that. I started to fixate on the fact that that was my ticket to success. And so come my junior year, I don't remember what dance it was. There was a school dance, and someone that I know was helping me get ready, and we were looking at a magazine, and she was like, oh my gosh, like she has the best body. And I was like, huh? Because mind you, my whole life, like I did not really play into, I guess, societal beauty standards or anything like that. It just didn't register to me. I wasn't someone who looked at magazines. I wasn't really allowed to watch much TV. There wasn't really social media back then like there is now. Like there was MySpace or Facebook. I'm really aging myself. But there wasn't just something where you can doom scroll and see all these people all around the world. So at that time, kind of tabloids and magazines were the thing. And she was looking at it and she was basically like, oh, like her legs don't touch. And I just was like, what does that even mean? Which is like in this photo when she stands, her legs don't touch. And that was like the first time I've ever heard something like that. Like I never even thought about that or didn't think of those things. And then it instilled in me this like, oh, is that the beauty standard? Because my legs don't do that. I don't look like that. Like I wasn't like overweight or anything, but I was like a chubbier kid. And I was just like, oh, so that's what is considered quote, quote, beautiful. And I think even nowadays, the beauty standards that are portrayed are often really toxic and just wrong, in my opinion. But I do think it is a little bit better now than it was back then, I will say. But back then, yeah, like America's Next Top Model, all of these things, it was just like we were fed all this information of like, this is what looks good or looks right or whatnot. So anyways, that triggered something in my mind where my wheel started spinning, where I was like, oh, these are things that people think about and talk about and notice that I hadn't noticed up until that point. And then it's obviously now it's in my brain. And I don't blame this person at all, because at that time, the information that she was consuming and absorbing, it was presenting things in this way. So that was one moment. And then I was a cheerleader in high school, and we would get our yearly physicals. And when I think about this, it's so wrong and inappropriate. But at that time, I guess it didn't really register for my mom and me. But I went to go get a physical. The doctor was basically saying that my body fat percentage was higher than my muscle mass, and that I needed to gain more muscle and lose fat. And I remember this so clearly. I don't remember a lot of things in my childhood, or my younger years, but this I remember. He grabbed my like thigh area, like pinched my fat on my thigh area, and was like this is fat that can be turned into muscle. And Koreans are just ruthless, honestly, because that would be so inappropriate and would not be okay. Shouldn't have been then, and definitely is not now. But at that time, I think my mom and I just didn't register that. And my mom was like, okay, so what do we do? And he essentially was like, okay, she should start journaling what she's eating, essentially counting calories. And I think about this now, but in Korea, the beauty standard is crazy, and the pressure that they put on people to, even the idols and stuff, to be super, super thin to the point they're like frail and like eat so little and just all of these things. And obviously plastic surgery is huge in Korea. So just this desire and this kind of obsession to be a certain look and a certain vibe is big in that culture. And so I think that's why my mom at that time didn't really pick up on like, this is wrong. Now when she thinks about it, she's like, I wish I just like told off that doctor or like punched him, because it like ruined you. But so I started doing this like journaling thing, and I had never done it before. And it was just, at first it was just like healthy eating, right? And then it was time for applications for college, and I started to get very, very stressed. And I think this is the first experience in my life where I felt like any sort of like anxiety and like this like super intense burden and pressure of like going to a good school. And while I was filling out my applications and writing my essays and all of that, I think this thing dawned on me where I was like, even if I do well in school, even if I write a killer essay, even if I get a great SAT score, they get to perceive me through these documents and decide whether or not they want me. And I think that lack of control over the situation was really scary for me because at that time, even now, but less so now, but at that time, I was a really big control freak. Like, I had to feel like I was in control of every aspect of my life. And this was something that I really did not have control over. And I just could not stomach that. And so, I was like, I'm going to control the one thing that I can. And it was my eating. And it started out with just like counting calories, writing in my little food journal. And then slowly it just became like eating less and less and less and less to the point I was only eating like 3 Jolly Ranchers or like 3 cough drops a day. And I developed a very severe eating disorder and I developed anorexia, and I got to this point where I became very fearful of food. And I just didn't want to eat. Like the thought of eating or putting that into my body started to really scare me. And on top of that, I would go work out for like an hour a day, like very aggressively, which now I don't know how I did that, because now if I like don't eat for a few hours, I'm like, oh my gosh, my blood sugar is low. But yeah, at that time, I think my mental was just so fixated on this that my body should have been reacting more, but it wasn't. And I was just so deep in this illness. And I started to obviously like lose a lot of weight, and I got to this point where I was like starting to be like kind of unrecognizable. And at my worst, I think I was only 70 pounds. And my mom at that time was the only one that lived with me because my brother was in school, and then my dad was over in Colorado for business, and I was with my mom so that I could finish off high school where I grew up. And my mom really, really, really struggled with me because she was like, I think a lot of Korean American, not Korean Americans, but like Koreans who came from Korea or even in Korea, like anxiety and eating disorders is just not something really recognized or understood as like a sickness. And so for my mom, it was like super frustrating for her because she was like, just trying to force me to eat, and we would get into these like huge fights, like so scary, like screaming at each other, and it just got really bad, but she didn't know how to help me. And in my mind, I was fine. And this is the thing with a lot of people who experience ED is you have a very skewed view of what you look like or how you're perceived. So when I would look at myself, I'm just like, I'm fine. Like, I'm thin, but I'm fine. But when other people would look at me, like, you could see my bones, like, coming out of my chest, and, like, my arm was like a toothpick. And I was just looking so sick. And I was a cheerleader, like I said. So we would do, performances in front of the school. And I just had no energy. And I would do these performances. And I started to notice and realize that people were looking at me with these like eyes of concern. And I think that made me get really defensive, and it made me close in. And I was like, people keep thinking that I have an issue, but I don't. Like, why does everyone look at me this way? And so then into my senior year, I just stopped kind of going to classes or school, and I would just keep saying that I was sick. And so my mom would call the school saying that I'm sick, and I would just not go to school. And this was kind of partially because I was kind of annoyed at the looks that people were giving me, but also I was really in my head, I was just like, people think that I have a problem, but I don't, and they don't understand, and all these things. It was just, I was really having like an internal battle, and my mom would like leave food in the fridge, being like, 'cause she would go to work or errands or whatever, and then she would say, eat whatever's in the fridge. And I got really good at kind of sneaking that I ate, so I was like being very sly with it all, and like it just was really bad. Like I started developing habits of like, like cutting things a certain way, or like taking like one nibble and then like chucking things and all of that. So it was just a very rough time and hard to navigate. And um, my best friend, like when I would go to school, it was like the thick of summer, and I would wear these puffer jackets because I'm so cold all the time. And I would just go to my car during recess or lunch, and I would just sleep in my car until the next class. And I was visibly looking very ill. And I remember that my hair would just fall out in chunks, like chunks at a time in the shower. So I had such thin hair. And to be honest, to this day, my hair has never recovered. Like I have pretty thin hair now. And then my skin was like kind of yellowy because I was so malnutrition, and my eyes were really sunken in. And my best friend, who is my best friend now, she's like my sister. She is everything to me. Like we've been best friends now for, I feel like, over 20 years, and she was my best friend then. And she had a really hard time because she didn't know how to help me. And so she actually went to a counselor that I had a relationship with, and essentially had a conversation with her, being like, I'm really scared for Debbie and her life, but I don't know how to navigate this, and I don't know what to do. And I understand, like, we're young then. Like, I'm sure she didn't know how to handle a situation like that. And so the counselor called me in, and she had this conversation with me, and like, do you need resources? Like, do you need, someone to help you get through this? And again, I was very defensive, and I was so like angry. And in my mind, I was like, how can my best friend like go to the counselor and like, go behind my back and tell her? But when I look back now, and knowing her and knowing how she knows me and how I would have reacted in that situation, like that really was her last resort. And as a friend who really loved and cared about me, like I'm very grateful to her for looking out for me in that way, and being able to be like, she's probably going to get pissed off at me for doing this, but I don't know what else to do. And so, she, I had that conversation with the counselor, and I was just like, no, I'm fine. And so then again, went through the same pattern, didn't go to school even more now. But I didn't do any social activities. At one point, I was so exhausted all the time. I had no energy. 2, I just like didn't want to like constantly hide things around people. 3, I didn't like the way that people were approaching me or thinking of me, because I could tell from their look. And so I just didn't go to any social activities. I didn't go to prom or anything like that. And when it came to choosing schools, I didn't get into my dream schools, none of them. And NYU was never an option for me. But when I had this thought of like, I can go to a different city far away and nobody knows me, that was really enticing. And so my family was not in a position to send me there. And so I had to like really beg. And I went to I decided on NYU because of that reason. So it wasn't really like I'd planned to go there. It was one of the schools I had been thinking about, or any of that. It was just this idea of I wanted to escape this reality of what was happening and existing currently. And that summer, I was going to Korea with my mom. I had never been. And now I'm going to be spending every second with my mom. And so we go to Korea, and I couldn't do my little tricks and habits in Korea because my mom is like watching me like a hawk. And so we were touring with 2 of my mom's friends, and we would go to different places. We would go to different restaurants. We would eat all these different foods. And I remember we got dinner once, and then we were going to this like ice cream shop, and this entire time, like, yes, I'm like starting to like pick around food, and like even at restaurants I would like move stuff around on my plate so it looked like I ate more, but then or like hide things under other food, but I did have to eat because my mom is watching me. And the entire time all I can think about was that, like, it really is something that just like overtakes your entire mind, and all I could think about was like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, like I really don't want to do this, you know. And then so we had dinner one night, and then we went to go to this like ice cream shop, and I started to feel really sick, and I started to feel really unwell. And while we were in the ice cream shop, I just fainted, and I was in so much pain in my stomach, and I just passed out. And they had to call, I guess it's 119 in Korea, like 911 here. And the ambulance came, and they had to like take me. It's not funny, but like thinking back on it, it's just like, God. So we were in a very, very busy area called Myeongdong, and they had to take me out on a stretcher and literally like pull me through the like really busy streets of Myeongdong. And at this point, I like regained some consciousness, but I was like, girl, do not open your eyes right now. Just keep them closed. But I could hear, you know, people passerbys being like, oh man, like in Korean, they're like, oh, 불쌍해, which is like kind of, I don't know how to explain that in English, but just like concerned. And so at the hospital, they were basically saying like her stomach went into shock, and her stomach just like just knotted up. So that's why I was feeling so much pain and like all of that. But they were like, she's gonna be okay. But is there any like history of anything with the stomach? And my mom was just like, no, but she is not eating. And the doctor was kind of like, she's really lucky for her body to be in the condition that it is after putting it through what she has, but she needs to be careful and she needs to get better because that's not going to work. And so it was a really big wake up call for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like the first instance where I realized like, okay, this is an issue and this is a problem and this could jeopardize my life. And so I tried to like work on it and heal. And coming back from Korea, my mom and I were like, you know, let's work on getting better. But then I got really sick, like flu and just the whole, everything. I was bedridden, and again, I like lost a ton of weight, and then I started to revert back into the pattern and the cycle. And one thing my dad said to me when I was going to New York was, you like, we're giving you this opportunity that we honestly have no right to be giving, and we're not able to financially right now as a family, but you want it so bad that we're going to do this for you, but you are not going to go there and continue this life the way that you are, because there's no way to succeed in the shape that you are in right now. So like I made kind of a promise to them, and when I went to school, like it was really hard. It was really hard because I was in a completely new city. I had never left home in the 18 years of my life. I lived in a small town. I grew up there. I went to New York City, don't know anybody, don't have a single friend, and I have this severe eating disorder. So it was just like a lot happening that was just not a very good, like all of those things together were just not good for me at that season of my life, but what could I do, right? So I really struggled my first quarter there, but I really tried to like get through this. And then I was introduced to alcohol. And in my like teen years, I never drank, I never partied, I never did any of that because my dad was very, very strict. Like I had a 9 p.m. curfew all of my life, and I barely got to go out even. So I got introduced to alcohol in my freshman year of college, and I realized what it could do in terms of, if you drink enough, you stop thinking about things. If you drink enough, it erases your memory. And it's kind of hard to talk about that, but I just started to like really enjoy that feeling of not being able to remember things, because it took me away from my reality and of my thoughts for that moment where I was drinking. And it became really bad. Like every time I drank, I essentially like blacked out or passed out or whatever. And when I came home after my freshman year, the one thing it did was I did gain all the weight back to like a quote, quote, healthier level. But when I got home, my dad just looked at me and he was like, I don't need to hear anything to know how you spent this last year. And it was just the most like disappointed I think he's ever been in me. And he was just like, okay, you're done. You're cut off. Because at that point, they still were helping me out financially. And like, I had like my dad's credit card for emergencies, but I abused that. And I obviously spent an entire year just being on benders and not being good, basically. And so my dad was like, you're done. And so I think after that, I went back to school, and in a way, I'm very fortunate that when I was growing up, I didn't have to like work. I didn't have to think about that. All I had to think about was school. And I think I'm really blessed in that way because that wasn't the reality for a lot of people my age. But I hadn't worked before. So now I'm cut off. I'm living in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. So then I ended up finding a bunch of part-time jobs. So I was working like 4 part-time jobs. And then, you know, I was going to school, and I was also an RA because we got free housing. So I had no time to do anything else, which was amazing because I wasn't partying. I wasn't doing any of that. But mentally, I was in such a like depressed place where mentally I was so unhappy, and I was like, I can't believe this is my life. And I just really, really struggled those years that I was in college and trying to find a path, but also not knowing like what I want to do, and, you know, grasping at anything that would come my way, basically. It was like a survival mode type situation. And I think I always had these like negative thoughts in terms of like my self-image and my confidence, and reverting back and relapsing into my old habits. Like it kept sprinkling in throughout the years, and you know, it consumed my mind in so many ways. So when I graduated college and I came to LA, the first couple of years I was just like balls to the walls, insane partying. And I think a lot of that was I was using that as a crutch almost, because I didn't want to face certain aspects of myself, and I didn't want to face the pain of like certain things that I had experienced while I was going through ED, and like just those thoughts that would trickle into my mind and still be there. It was like still in the back of my mind. And I don't know, I think I was just so disappointed in myself, and I felt so angry and bitter at myself that it was almost hard to face the reality of all of these years combined and just like get through it. And so I think maybe like 2 years after I came back to LA, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot live like this anymore. You know, I think going through something like an eating disorder and then having that just like kind of stick with you for so many years. Like I did a lot of therapy to kind of get past that and get through that, and trying to iron out what it was that was causing me to have these thoughts and how to heal and all of those things. So I did do a lot of self-work, but I think in the end, like I had to be able to sit with myself and sit with that discomfort and sit with the reality that I went through all of this, and that like I'm choosing that this is no longer going to be my narrative. I'm not going to live in this shadow of what happened. I'm not going to let that rule every aspect of my life moving forward. And I really had to sit with that for a while, and it was very uncomfortable, and I really hated it. But I told myself 1 year I'm going to give myself to do things right. I'm not going to do this whole yo-yo situation. I'm not going to go back to my habits no matter how much I want to, and we're going to do this for a year. We're going to do this right. We're going to do this healthy way. Like I'm no longer going to live in this pattern. So then for a year, I really committed myself to just giving myself time and space and grace to heal properly. And that meant working out like a normal person, eating like a normal person, but making sure I was fueling myself with proper things, trying not to just resort to alcohol, though I kept partying, but like not using that as like this crutch to forget about things. And in that year, I really fell in love with health and wellness, and I loved fitness, and I loved like just being able to get stronger and to be able to, you know, build my body up in a way that was healthy after going through all that I did, after putting my body through all that it did. And, you know, there are long-term effects from doing something that traumatic to your body in terms of like how your body processes food and all of those things. And so I had to heal a lot internally as much as I did externally. And doing it the right way, though, I really did find a new avenue that I really enjoyed. And I got so into fitness that a couple years later, I got certified to be a trainer. And, you know, I was working at one of the studios out here, and it was really fun. And it's something that has now become a huge part of my life, a huge part of my life. I love it. I know a lot about it. I know a lot about like, you know, wellness things, about health. I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac. Everyone that knows me knows this. But a lot of times, like, you know, things were wrong with my body. Like I was having adult acne, and, you know, you go to the doctor, you get blood work done. They're like, you're fine. But I'm like, no, these reactions happening in my body shouldn't be happening. And just because these panels are coming back normal, what is this normal measured against? And so I started getting very deep into that and like researching and doing all of things myself to, you know, properly heal, fuel all of that with my body. And I think when I look back on my younger self, which I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately, it's like my heart really breaks for her. And I think I get really sad when I think about that version of me. Oh God, don't get emotional now. But a lot of times people go through something like that and they can't get out of it, and they get stuck in it for much longer than I did. And I think there came a point during my journey where I was like, I could die if I keep doing this. If I keep on, this is not sustainable. Like, I will lose my life. And I think I'm just so, so, so grateful that I had, you know, a community around me that supported me, that loved me through all of that, that, you know, really poured into me to remind me of my value and just the purpose and the joy of life, and who walked with me through that. And just to myself for putting in all of the years of work to be able to get to where I am now and to be able to heal so completely. I think that was everything for me. And I was able to rewrite my story. Like I was able to rewrite that this is not Debbie. That's not the Debbie that I want to be. And that's not the Debbie that is going to be me moving forward. Like I'm rewriting my narrative. Like, yes, that was a traumatic part of my life and it's going to influence me in ways, but I'm not going to live in that story. Like that's no longer, you know, me. And I can honestly say when I like now, I really find so much joy and purpose in a lot of things and a lot of other aspects. And I'm very observant and I'm very mindful and intentional with like everything about life, because I'm so grateful that I get to live it and that I get to live it in this like beautiful way where I see the world colorfully and I, you know, get to invest and cultivate relationships with people I love. I think I'm just really lucky to be able to do that. And I think a lot of women especially have experiences similar to mine where, you know, you struggle with self-image, you struggle with confidence, and, you know, whether it's whether it's something just like a confidence thing, or if it's something internally in your mind where you're really struggling and this is something that you've kind of had issues with as well. It's just, I think it's not talked about enough. We see a lot of people who on social media who have like a certain look or a certain vibe, and we, compare ourselves. And if you doom scroll enough, it's just inevitable that's going to happen. Like, it happens to me all the time. But it's, being really mindful of that, and then also removing the things that are making you feel that way and not indulging in it. Or if you're feeling like, okay, I'm starting to feel kind of negatively, it's being hyper aware and being able to remove those triggers from you so that you're not feeding into this false narrative. But I also think just I've never talked about it to the depth that I have. I've, people close to me know that I've went through this. I've shared a little bit on Instagram, but I've never talked about the entire journey or process of what it was like. And I think when I started this, I was like, I expect people to tell me about their kind of, well, not expect, but I'm hoping that people share with me certain aspects of their lives that are not pretty, or that they've gone through that was a really big struggle. But like, to not be able to share that myself would be kind of, in my opinion, weird. So I did want to share that. And I think, everyone has gone through something in their life, and something that has really altered their being. But I do want to say that and encourage that that doesn't have to be your entire story. Like, that doesn't have to be everything that characterizes who you are. Yes, it's a part of you. It's always going to be a part of you. But there's so much more that's ahead, and that there's so much more in your life currently that are blessings, that are beautiful moments, that are beautiful things that I think when you pour into that and when you tap into that and really think about pouring into yourself and loving yourself and showing up for yourself, things change, things shift. The way that you feel about your life, the way that you see yourself, that shifts. And I think that's just so important. And I feel like I'm not the most confident person or anything like that. I have my insecurities. I struggle, and, I deal with anxiety a lot. So I'm not always like this happy, bubbly girl, but at the same time, I think I've developed a certain level of like love for myself and confidence in myself, that I was able to get through something that was a very, very tough season, that I was able to care for my body, to be able to physically do things, like I'm so grateful to my body for being able to be put through so much and to be able to still be here healthy, and just the like mundane things, like being able to take a walk and being able to move my body in the way that I can. Like, I think it just opened my mind to so much more gratitude and excitement for like what's ahead and for the future. And I just think that like people don't talk about their insecurities or, confidence issues very often, but everyone has them. Every single person has insecurities and, goes through seasons where they don't feel that confident in themselves or whatnot. But I think as you continue to love on yourself and train your mind almost to think positively, like I do this practice where I look myself in the mirror and I give myself positive affirmations, and it kind of seems silly, but when you do things to put yourself at a higher frequency and a higher energy where you're feeling positive and you're feeling good, even if you don't 100% feel it, it trains your mind and it trains your soul to like latch on to those positive affirmations and really start to embed them in your mind and to really feel them in your spirit. And it really does make a difference, and it really changes, how you begin to see yourself. I feel like I've changed completely in that realm. I'm very like, I think I have this thing where I'm like, I'm not going to be a supermodel, or I'm not going to be like, a friggin' influencer or whatnot. Like, that's just not my journey, and I'm okay with that. And I think the way that beauty standards have been portrayed and confidence has been portrayed is a little bit misleading. Not a little bit, like it's misleading. And I think, I would love to see people be more like raw and authentic and talk about the shit that makes them feel like not good. Because, you know, we all have those days. Like some days I wake up in the morning and I'm like, ooh, like I am looking rough and today is not my day. Or I have weeks like that or months like that. But I think, you know, we look at people in the media or we look at people on social media and we're just like, wow, like their life, their look, their blah, blah, blah. And it's not healthy. And I think nowadays more people are being more authentic about, you know, certain things they struggle with, or just like being more real about what they portray, which I appreciate so much. But I think it's important to remember that everyone is going through something and everyone is dealing with insecurities in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, someone who's acting confident all the freaking time, a lot of times probably faking it. And honestly, I fake it a lot too. But I think when I get into the habit of like, you know, okay, let me practice confidence. I don't feel confident right now. I actually feel very socially anxious. I don't feel good in my skin, but let me just like try. Let me just put in this effort to show up for myself and just like act confident. That starts to build and you start to practice that enough and it just becomes a part of who you are. I think that's like how fitness was for me. Like the more I did it, it just became a part of me where it was like it doesn't even feel normal if I don't do it in my day kind of thing. And I think everything that you do in life is practice and it's effort. Everything. You know, like you can sit in a certain situation or a certain trauma or a certain season of your life and decide that that's going to be it and you're just going to sit in that. But to put in the effort, to choose to, you know, navigate the unknown or choose to take a leap of faith and do something that feels scary, that outside your comfort zone, like that is where you grow and that is where, you know, more opportunities that you couldn't even have imagined happen. And so I think I just wanted to kind of encourage that like, you know, everyone goes through things. Everyone has insecurities. Everyone, you know, has stories to tell. But ultimately, like you have one life and to be able to have it is the greatest gift. And how you utilize it and how you're going to show up for yourself every single day is so important and so valuable. And I don't know, like I think me sharing this part of my story is like to show that like you can get through it and you can see the other side, and the other side is way better than you could have imagined. And if you are going through something like I did currently, I see you and I know how hard it is. It's tough for people to understand when you deal with something like an eating disorder, because it's in your head, like it's all in your head and you're fighting yourself and you're battling your own mind. And it's really hard, I think, for external people to understand that. But speaking from someone who's gone through it and has experienced it, like I understand how hard it is and I understand how painful it is, but you can get through it. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's very hard, but you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel if you choose to heal, if you choose to, you know, decide that this isn't going to be your life. So yeah, I think I did want to touch on this at some point in this podcast. I didn't think it was going to be so early, but it was definitely important to me to share and important to me to talk about this. And yeah, I feel like I kind of blacked out for this duration of however long I've talked, but yeah, I think I definitely want to make sure that I'm being very like authentically who I am on this. You know, it is a platform that I started to create a safe space to be able to share things like this. And I hope that people that come on feel that way and that I can cultivate that kind of environment. But yeah, I think this was a really big part of my story and a big part of what shaped me and a big part of why I can be who I am and live in this like joy and gratitude and fulfillment, is because I went through something that showed me what it could be like, which was this like very, very dark and lonely, joyless place. Like I wasn't happy. I was so miserable because I was so just tired and so, you know, like I didn't want to do anything. So living a life like that, but then to be able to see life in the way it is now, it's amazing. And I think I appreciate it so much, and I'm very grateful. And so that is a very long ramble of my life story and what I've gone through. But yeah, I think that was pretty heavy for today's episode. But if you've listened to this whole thing, thank you for journeying with me and for listening. And I think the next episode will not be so heavy, and it actually is going to be really exciting. I'm going to bring one of my best friends, Sharon, on, and she's got a wealth of knowledge and so many great things to talk about. But yeah, I'm really out of breath now. But thank you so much for listening. I hope this kind of brought some perspective or some kind of value, or if you're experiencing something similar, brought you some comfort that you're not alone. And I hope that I can continue to do that with these episodes. So thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.